All right, so we're recording, and did you have something to say, Audrey? No? Okay. Did you see her? Did I hear you say something? Okay. All right, you can interrupt me anytime, as you know. All right, so Najja Parker. All right, at full disclosure, Najja and I were co-workers for what, 5-6 years?
Yeah.
Around there, at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I also consider her a very good friend. And I've just learned a lot from her over the 5-6 years that I've gotten to know Najja, and not just from a newsletter standpoint, which she'll talk to you about today, but really just as a comprehensive journalist. So someone who does multi-platform, video and newsletter and social, but also someone who does different topics, right? So arts and entertainment, she was very good at that. She was very good at writing things that were good for to be like quick hits or digital pieces, bite-sized pieces. And then she's done newsletter portfolios, even creating some of the things that Ozzy pointed out about unapologetically ATL. So I'm sure you'll get into that later today. And really just the all-around consummate journalist. So that's why I asked her to be here for you all today. And to just, like I said in my note, if you read my note, to bring to life newsletters, because this is such a powerful tool in newsrooms that they hire entire teams to figure out what the content should be, when to distribute it, how to analyze the data of behavior of people who engage with these newsletters, how to even get people to sign up for these newsletters and to be part of the community. And so that is like a thing in journalism, and it's one that people highly revere. How many people have asked you to be in the newsletter? How many reporters come and ask you to be in the newsletter? So I will let Najja take it from here, and you should be able to share your screen if you want.
Let me try to do that.
But you'll have to optimize for sound if you have any video clips before you hit, after you hit share.
Am I sharing yet? Can everybody see the things?
You can see.
Okay, awesome.
Loving the Dreamville shirt, loving it.
Oh, okay. So, I will try not to get off topic, but I'm glad we have that in common. So as Nikki stated, my name is Najja Parker, and I am a multimedia journalist at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I've been there for about 6 years. I first came to the AJC back in 2016. And this is just an overview of my career journey thus far. I am a graduate of Spelman College, so big fan of the AUC forever and always. I will be there at homecoming in a few weeks, so I'm excited to be reunited with a lot of my classmates and to be back on campus. When I was at Spelman, I earned my bachelor's degree in both English and theater. I was a double major, so storytelling was a really big deal for me. I've always been interested in how to tell stories in a variety of ways. So English and theater allowed me to do that both creatively on stage and with writing. After I left Spelman College, I headed to Columbia College Chicago, where I got my master's degree in journalism. So the program was about 1.5 to 2 years, and it really gave me the foundation that I needed to be a successful journalist. Spelman College at the time didn't have a lot of journalism programs, so I really got my start when I made it to grad school. But luckily, I had the foundation of good writing to help me get through the program. After I finished grad school, actually while I was in grad school, I was able to intern at Johnson Publishing Company, and that is the home to Ebony and Jet magazine. I don't think it's called Johnson Publishing Company anymore. Both of these magazines have since been bought by other companies, but at the time it was under JPC. And I started out as an intern, a digital intern and a print intern. I got to work on the Jet Beauty of the Week. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but that was an iconic feature back in the day. So that was one of my responsibilities. I also was responsible for the obits, which was a little morbid, but it needed to be done. And they usually let the interns get that part done. After I finished my internship, I did some freelancing for about 8 months, and I stayed in touch with my Jet and Ebony family. And I finally was able to snag a job as an editorial assistant. So I worked very closely with the senior editors to pitch new ideas for the magazine, both in print and digitally. So I stayed at the magazine for about 3 years or so. And then I decided that I was ready to come back to Atlanta, and I got a job at the AJC, like I mentioned earlier, as a content producer. So I was covering viral news, entertainment, and culture, as Nikki has mentioned. And then a couple of years after that, right before the pandemic, I got a new role as a multi-platform audience specialist. So that was my first time really dabbling into the newsletter scene. I knew that they existed, but I had never worked on newsletters before, but my newsroom had a lot of faith in me. I'm glad they did. And I was able to get my start with newsletters about 3 years ago. I also worked on social media accounts, helping to publish things across our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter platforms. And I also helped work on the homepage. So basically determining what folks see when they log on to the ajc.com. And as of last November, I was promoted to my current title, which is a newsletter coach. So I'm still dealing heavily with newsletters, but now I get to work on strategy. So finding ways to boost engagement and help improve our subscriptions and increase our overall products. And I should also mention that I am a Memphis native. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, so I'm a Southern girl at heart, and Atlanta is considered to be my second home. And feel free to stop me throughout the presentation. I would love for this to be a conversation. So if you have questions throughout, ask away. This here is an overview of what my daily responsibilities look like in my current role. So on the left side is basically my to-do list. I have one in real life too. I love a to-do list. I have to write things down. If it's not written down, I'm not gonna do it. So that helps keep me accountable. So my to-do list looks a lot like this on paper. My start time is 7 in the morning. And I first start off by knocking out 2 of our really important daily newsletters. The first one is AM News, and it is a general news newsletter that involves topics on politics, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle. The next one is the Morning Jolt, which is a political newsletter. It gives a lot of good insight into the political scene. As you know, Georgia is a hot spot this election season. We got some big elections coming up and all eyes are on Georgia. So that's one that's really important. And then usually I have a couple of meetings that I need to attend, one including a products meeting. So as a newsletter coach, I act as a liaison between the newsroom and our products team. So I work with the newsroom to gather the content that we would like to include in the newsletter. And then as far as the product side, we want to make sure that the technical side looks good. So we want to make sure that the templates are up to date, that the newsletters are sent on time, and that we don't run into any type of technical issues that will prevent a reader from receiving their newsletter. So a lot of times we use our products meeting as a chance to just catch up on what we are working on. I also attend an engagement meeting, and that's just a newsroom-wide meeting where we talk about what stories are coming up. This is a great meeting for me to attend, so I get a general overview of what I could possibly include in the newsletter. I also do a lot of newsletter training. So we have several different platforms that I'll get into a little later that help us develop a newsletter. And so a lot of times I'm training reporters on how to use our platform in case they are involved with a particular newsletter. Sometimes I have lunch. Usually there is not a particular blocked out time for it. Usually I'm eating lunch while I'm working on a newsletter, but I'm trying to get better at separating my lunch time from my work time. That's still a work in progress, so I'll have to update you later on when I nail that. And then the rest of my afternoon looks like prepping additional newsletters, like our politics newsletters and our weekly newsletters, such as Unapologetically ATL. I also spend a lot of my time strategizing with our data team. They help us develop our metrics. And I see we have a question from Ozzy.
I didn't mean to cut you off, going through your duties, but when you're talking about prepping newsletters, is this where you come up with your outlines? Because I know me personally, I can't write anything without an outline, whether that's an editorial, something academic. I can't write anything without an outline. And if I wrote something that wasn't good, it's probably because I didn't have an outline. So when do you make time to really outline what you're going to write?
So that's a great question. And that will help me break down the type of newsletters that we offer. So the AJC offers 3 different types of newsletters. One is a curated newsletter, which is heavy with links. So when you open up a curated newsletter, you will see just a collection of links that will take you back to our website. So it's not meant for you to read the content within the newsletter is meant to drive you back to the website. So that's one that we offer. Another type of newsletter that we offer is a voice newsletter. And that is when we ask our reporters to help guide our readers through a particular topic or a story of the day. So in my role as a newsletter coach, I help put these pieces together. I'm not always writing portions of the newsletter. Usually I'm collaborating with the newsroom and the products team to get that done. So a lot of times reporters specifically for a voice newsletter will submit their already edited copy to me, and it is my responsibility to upload it into our system and to send it out. So does that answer your question a little bit? Okay, cool.
It does, thank you.
What was the third? You said one was voice, one was a inbox experience, the links, and then.
And the
You
third,
said curated voice, and then what was the third one again?
the third one is a hybrid, so just a combination of both. So we have newsletters that have both voice elements and curated elements as well. Thank you, Nikki.
All right, got that, thank you.
No problem. Another chunk of my day is with metrics and analytics. So we want to always make sure we're communicating with our data team to see how a newsletter is performing. And I'll get into that a little later about what the AJC looks for. And so we are always strategizing to find ways to boost our open rates, our click rates, and we also want to make sure that our unsubscribe rate is as low as possible. A couple of reminders at the top that I usually have to deal with are following up with our marketing team on particular brand sends. So for example, if the AJC has an event that's coming up, we will oftentimes use our newsletter to help promote that event and to help spread the word. So I have to collaborate a lot with our marketing team to make sure that the language is appealing and that we have some type of call to action that entices our readers to click on whatever the link is and to actually attend our event. And sending metrics reports is something that I also am responsible for. So we have a dashboard that we use that collects all of our data based on the metrics that I just mentioned. So that open rate, that click rate, and that unsubscribe rate, I have to report those out to our manager. And then prepping for our Unapologetically ATL meeting. That is a meeting that we have weekly. Unapologetically ATL is probably our most collaborative newsletter that we have at the AJC right now. So it requires about 5 people, and we come together to pitch different ideas and to write and to make sure that the product looks as great as possible. And then the last one on the reminder section is just to approve copy for special email sends. So another example that I have for this is we have a variety of products outside of newsletters. We have the e-paper, which is basically the digital version of the print newspaper. We also have events, which I mentioned earlier, and tons of social media pages. So right now, one of our big pushes is a portion of the e-paper that is dedicated to the Braves. The Braves they're a very popular team. I don't know a lot about baseball, but I know they're good. So we have a special portion of the e-paper that's called After the Game. And right now we are using the newsletter to help promote their particular product. So this week I've been working a lot with making sure that copy is up to date and that the links and the call to action are appropriate and ready to go. A couple of other notes I'll make about the AJC and my responsibilities. The AJC has about 26 newsletters, so we have a pretty lofty portfolio, and the topics range. We have politics, we have sports, we have Black culture, we have a Things to Do newsletter, we also have a food and dining newsletter, and then we have those general topic newsletters, which is just a combination of everything that I just mentioned. I manage about 70 to 75% of them. So when I say manage, I mean that I help get the newsletter out to our readers. I'm responsible for sending the newsletter and curating the newsletter based on what is available from our newsroom already, or I'm working with reporters to get content for the newsletter. And then also I will note that the newsletter coach position is a new one. The AJC has not had this role before, so we are basically learning as we go. November will mark a year that we've been in this position, and so we're doing our best. And Nikki mentioned earlier that the newsletter team is becoming really important in newsrooms these days, and the AJC is in the process of building their newsletter team. So currently I work with a variety of people, but as far as a newsletter team, there are probably about 3 to 4 of us. We have a newsletter producer, and we also have a designer who helps us come up with what our templates will look like. And then we are in the process of looking for a newsletter manager. So that's currently a position that's open. So the AJC knows the importance of newsletters, and we are hoping to ramp up our team so that we can have a dedicated group who works on this all day. And a lot of times people are splitting their responsibilities between doing newsletters and being a reporter or being an editor. But hopefully the goal of a newsletter team will have us have one linear focus. So I know Nikki reviewed this in your last class, so hopefully this will serve as a nice reminder of why newsletters are important. One major thing we want to achieve with newsletters is to boost engagement. This is a great way to talk directly to your readers by delivering them content straight to their email inboxes. It's also an opportunity to create page views. So as I mentioned earlier, we have those curated newsletters, which is just a collection of links. When folks open up their newsletter, they click on one of our links and it takes them back to the website. That increases our page views. That's absolutely something that we want. Another thing is social media. So we oftentimes embed our social media accounts within newsletters, just so we'll have opportunities for cross promotion. So when folks see a social media account, they have an opportunity to click the follow button. So it's also an opportunity to boost your followers on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And the AJC is exploring TikTok. We have an account, but we haven't developed a strategy for it just yet. But when we do, I'm sure we'll also embed our TikTok pages into our newsletters. Another added benefit is being able to increase your revenue. So the AJC offers both free and premium newsletters. The majority are free, but there are some newsletters that you can only view if you pay for a digital subscription. I believe that the digital subscription for the AJC is around $10. So that subscription comes with being able to receive your e-paper in your email inbox every morning around 5:30 a.m. And it also includes access to some of our premium newsletters. So the Morning Jolt is one that I listed earlier. Another one is the Afternoon Update and the Evening Read and Inspire Atlanta. I'm sure I'm leaving out some other ones, but we want to make sure that we have premium products that come with our digital subscription so folks can really understand the value of what they're paying for. So newsletters is an opportunity to do that. And lastly, we want to be able to grow and maintain our audiences. So we want to introduce new readers to our product with free content, and we want to convert them into paying subscribers. And for the paying subscribers that we do have, we want to offer them exclusive content and offers so that they continue to have their subscription and that they don't unsubscribe. We want to keep our churn rate as low as possible. So these are a few of the reasons why newsletters are really important. Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. Going back to the boosting engagement, when it comes to journalism and multimedia, one thing that really fascinates me a lot is social media engagement, how much that has changed the scape of what journalism really looks like and how we consume media, basically. And so my question to that is, with social media like constantly changing, how important is, how do I want to word this? The youth, because at the end of the day, the youth, we control we control what social media platforms are like the most consumed and how we consume them through those platforms. Do y'all really like how in tune with you, or how in tune are you with the youth when it comes to social media engagement?
That's a great question. So the AJC offers a really great internship program, and that helps us be in tune with the youth a lot. So we actually just brought on a new intern. Her name is Trisha, and I believe she is from Kennesaw. I hope I'm not screwing up the name of her school, but we keep in tune with what's going on in social media by engaging with our internships. And we also, like I mentioned earlier, I know we're a little late to the TikTok game, but we're dabbling in TikTok to find out the best uses for it and what makes sense for our social media strategy. So our interns, they have a lot of say in what we do. We always listen to their ideas and we encourage them to identify any blind spots that our newsroom has. And we encourage them to try basically anything. So that's one way that we're keeping in tune with our younger audience. Another example is through our events. The HIC recently held a virtual event that talked to HBCU students students about their campus experience, being back on campus after 2 rough years in the pandemic. So we actually invited I'm sure it was rough, I could not imagine, but we invited them to talk about their experience on our AJC platform, and we gave voice to them. So those are a couple of ways that we try to stay in tune with the youth. This next slide is about our audience funnel. So the best way to think about an audience funnel is to think about the journey you want readers to take when they're interacting with your brand or your product. So this starts with awareness at the very top of the funnel. This is where you want to just introduce folks to your brand, introduce folks to your product, and you want to let them know that we have information or content that you might be interested in. And then we want to keep that interest and continue to feed them content that they enjoy that will hopefully turn them into paying subscribers. So that's where your conversion kind of comes into play. And once you got people's money, you want to keep their money, and you want to make sure that you're helping to build habit. You want to continue feeding them. You want to continue feeding them information that they're interested in so that they build habit. So building habit includes things like making sure your newsletter goes out at the same time every day. So folks will know, okay, at 10 a.m., I can expect this newsletter to be in my inbox, or at 12 a.m., I can expect this type of content to be in my inbox. Those are examples of building habit. And once you build habit, you will inevitably have loyal subscribers, and you will help keep your unsubscribe rate all the way down to the bottom. Any questions about this funnel? So creating a newsletter, these are a couple of things that you should consider. One at the top, let me move this out of the way. One thing at the top here that I have is content. So content is king. From your subject line to the content that's actually in the newsletter, you want to make sure that your content is top tier. You want to take deep consideration into what your readers see when they first open their email inboxes. So you open up your Gmail and you see a from name and you see a subject line, and I'm sure you skip over a lot of stuff that doesn't interest you. So if you're creating a newsletter, you want to make sure that your subject line is eye-catching. The next thing you want to consider is your frequency. So data will help you determine that. It can vary from newsroom to newsroom. I know Nikki presented on some of this in your last class about 10 a.m. being a really great send time. We absolutely have 10 a.m. is a send time for our newsletters, particularly Unapologetically ATL, which I will get into shortly, but assessing your data will help you determine that. So if you have a month's worth of data and you want to play with maybe some A/B testing and compare what an 8 a.m. send is like compared to a 10 a.m. send, you can determine which one of those performs best to help you figure out the send times for your audience. And we've already mentioned metrics. So open rate, click rate, number of signups, conversion rate, those all determine what a successful newsletter looks like to you. Your open rate is basically how many times a person opens up your email. Usually a good open rate hovers around 30%, and the AJC is around that point as well. And then your click rate is based on what stories folks click on once they open up the newsletter. And so we have a click rate that is about 2 to 3%, which is in line with our industry standards. And then our conversion rate, it varies based on the newsletter. We have certain newsletters that we know more than likely will convert folks. So for example, that would be our politics newsletter and our sports newsletter. And again, politics is such a hot topic right now that all eyes are on Georgia. Folks want to know what our political experts have to say about what's going on with the race. In sports, we have a robust sports team. You got the Falcons. I don't think they're doing very good, at least historically in the last couple of years. You have the Braves, who they are doing pretty well. Atlanta United is another team that we follow. And the Hawks, I guess they're okay. Again, you know, sports is not my thing, so feel free to correct me on any of that. But my point is, I'm listening, go ahead.
So, and this is actually kind of going in the direction where you were headed with this. And I'm really looking at the content when you're talking about your subject matter, when you're writing newsletters. How hectic can it get when you have so many things that you want to write about? Because like you just brought up sports. I can think of like maybe 5 different topics off the bat that I can write a newsletter about, whether that's the Falcons being like, what, 1-3 right now. We could talk about the Hawks, how their new season is going to be projected. whether the Braves are going to go back to back again. It's like stuff like that. So like when it comes time to really solidify what content you're going to write for the week or for that day, for that matter, like what is that like trying to draft the content, not even just like draft the subject, not even just like writing the content?
That's a good question. So we basically draft the content by looking at what our audience likes. So we use metrics to help determine that. So a lot of our dashboards will tell us what folks are clicking on the most or what topics our folks are clicking on the most. So we can look at our dashboard and say, well, this week, the Braves was the #1 story in all of our sports content. This is probably a great subject to write about. And you have to remember that you don't have to get everything all out at once. Some newsletters are daily. So if you don't write about the newsletter or if you don't write about the Braves on a Monday, maybe you can take Tuesday as an opportunity to do that. But looking at our data really helps us determine what content we want to write about for a particular day. So what we know is that, United is not, we don't have a huge audience for our United content. So we might write about that less. Now, maybe if they were, kicking butt right now, that would be a different case, but that is not a team that we are heavily focused on right now because our data shows us that our readers are not engaging with that content as much as they are with the Braves and the Falcons. So building new audiences. The AJC has experimented with this within the last year or so. Last year, the newsroom put special emphasis on newsletters. We've always offered newsletters, but we put a lot of emphasis on boosting our engagement last year. And we even participated in a program called Table Stakes. It's a national program where newsrooms can participate for a year-long program where they help boost their strategy when it comes to culture and when it comes to their content. So the AJC participated with a newsletter team to help us determine how we can build new audiences. So one thing that we wanted to consider was what underserved communities do we have? What gaps or blind spots are we not filling in our coverage? So we wanted to be cognizant of underrepresented communities, and one of the communities was the Black community. And so I'll get into that a little later. We also wanted to identify blind spots by exploring topics that we typically do not cover. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what am I just naturally curious about? Is anybody else naturally curious about this topic? Is there a way for me to fit this into my routine and pitch topics that the AJC doesn't generally cover, or whatever newsroom that you're working for? You also want to examine your existing data. So the AJC has a lot of data about what its readership looks like. And traditionally, the AJC readers have been middle-aged to upper-aged white people who live in suburban Atlanta. So by looking at this data, we were able to determine what our underserved communities, we were able to identify our underserved communities. And then lastly, you can just conduct research. If you want to know what folks are interested in, just ask them. So you can build surveys around these topics. You can poll your readers to determine what their interests and their habits are, and just to gather overall feedback. So we are dabbling in more research these days. We recently added a survey to Unapologetically ATL to ask them, well, are you interested in these topics? Are you Black? Because, that's the audience that we want to reach. How did you hear about this newsletter? What more do you want to see from us? So those are the type of things that you can ask your readers if you don't know. So this is a good segue into the newsletter that I have been talking so much about. Unapologetically ATL is the latest newsletter from our newsroom. We launched about a year ago. We actually celebrated our 1-year anniversary on September 16th. Yes, I know the actual date. So we're really proud of this product. And we developed this newsletter from that program that I mentioned earlier, Table Stakes. We were able to look at our existing readership and determine that the Black community was underserved. And we wanted to be able to fill that gap by providing a product that was specifically for the Black community. So Unapologetically is co-hosted by 2 of our veteran journalists. One is Ernie Suggs. You see his face down here at the bottom. He is one of our culture and race reporters. I believe he's been at the AJC for more than 20 years. The other co-host we have, her name is Najja Parker. She is a lifestyle columnist, and she's been embedded in our Black community since she's been at the AJC. So this newsletter is written by Ernie and Najja primarily, but we've also invited our other co-workers to participate in it. So our co-workers have presented other stories. They have contributed to the Spotify section of the newsletter, where they can curate a playlist based on songs that have inspired them, or songs that have a particular theme. For example, this morning we focused on Black women who rock. So the playlist was all about Black women rockers. So Tina Turner was on the list, and some other names that I'm forgetting. We've also done one that was curated by HBCU students a couple of weeks ago. So the same folks that were on that virtual panel that we hosted, we asked them to help us develop our playlist. So I actually recognized a lot of those songs because I didn't know a lot about the women rockers. But the newsletter also includes content about what our Black journalists are really interested in. There's a section called On Tap, where we can feature our favorite podcast, our favorite books, our favorite TV shows or films or things to do around the city. And we also have a picture of the week as well as a video of the week. And it all pertains to Black culture, the trends in the news, and the topics that are shaping Black culture in Atlanta. In addition to looking at our existing readership, we know the importance of Atlanta. It is a cultural hotspot. Atlanta has so many different nicknames: the Black Mecca, the Hollywood of the South. I've heard Wakanda Forever. So it was a very obvious way to capture that black community. Have you not heard Wakanda Forever? I've heard that one. And I think Wakanda Forever is one of the names because Black Panther filmed in a lot of places in Atlanta. And
I didn't know any of that. That's funny.
Yeah, there's so many nicknames. It's part of the reason I wanted to come to Atlanta, because I knew it was associated with Black excellence. Even if you look at the HBCUs that are in the city, Atlanta has the majority of them. We have the largest amount. Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Morehouse, or Morris Brown just got their accreditation back. So a lot of that is really,
I feel like Atlanta's, I don't even want to say diversity, but the Black presence in Atlanta, I give a lot of that credit to our first Black mayor, Maynard Jackson.
Yeah.
He really had a hand in emphasizing the people of color and the role that they play in the city, and it grew to what we have today. So
I absolutely agree with you. I worked on a story with Ernie probably about 2 years ago. It was a Black History Month story titled "Atlanta Influences Everything," and we had a section where we discussed Mayor Jackson's contributions to making sure that Atlanta became a cultural hotspot. So you're absolutely right.
Have you ever heard of or been to Maynard Jackson High School?
I've heard of it, but I haven't been.
So that's where I went to high school before I moved overseas. It's a great place to be. A lot of talented students come through there. Just of course, myself, and of course some of my older homies. But like great writers, a lot of smart students come through that school.
And that's what we know about Atlanta. Like some of our favorite artists are here. Some of our favorite activists are here. Even when you take a look at the civil rights movement, a lot happened in Atlanta to advance us as a people. So in addition to looking at our readership, it was just an obvious answer to have a product that focused on the Black community. So that's how we came up with Unapologetically ATL. And if you have not subscribed, there is a QR code right in this area. You can just put your phone up to the screen and enter your email address, and you can see what the newsletter looks like. It's weekly, it's free. It comes out every Thursday morning. And today's newsletter, the main story focused on a Georgia DA who is working to clear the name of a sharecropper. He was accused of murder more than 70 years ago, and his name was never cleared. They saw that he did not commit the crime. They didn't have any evidence to support that he committed this crime. The crime was killing a white man. And so after all of these years, they realized, well, I mean, we know that he's innocent and he's no longer in jail, but his name hasn't been cleared yet. His name is still associated with this murder. So our lead story was exploring what the DA is doing to work towards clearing this man's name. They talked to some of his family members, including his son and his grandson, because the sharecropper, he has since passed away. So those are some of the topics that you can get in Unapologetically ATL. We're not always that serious because we want to highlight the problems of the Black community or the issues that we face, but we also want to talk about just how dope our culture is. So we focus a lot on entertainment as well. We recently did a story on DJ Oso. She's a Black DJ in Atlanta, and she hosts a lot of fun parties that help women in the LGBTQ community feel safe. So we featured her, and we're also working on other stories. Like we're working on does anybody watch the show Queen Sugar? It comes on the OWN network. We're working on a story featuring one of the actors. And we also did a feature on the film Hunk for Jesus that recently came out. And the film was produced by two Spelman women. They actually graduated in 2013, a year after me. And so we did an interview with Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown, and that seemed to perform well. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a survey. Oh, it's so great. I love it so much. The Queen Sugar Show, if you haven't watched it and you just need some good television about ordinary Black life in Louisiana. I think, Yasir, you said you were from New Orleans. So I just love the show. So that's a shameless plug. So that's what this newsletter is all about, just highlighting our Black culture and highlighting some of the challenges that we face. So these are a couple of other newsletter platforms that are commonly used in the industry. Iterable is the one that the AJC uses. So we use this platform to build out our templates, to determine what our templates will look like. We also use this platform to actually send our newsletters. So when you log onto Iterable, you will see a list of all of our email campaigns, and they're listed in the order that they were last sent or updated. Another one is Salesforce. We actually used Salesforce before we moved over to the Iterable platform. Substack is another one we've been experimenting with. We recently launched a Substack newsletter, again, about politics. So as you can probably tell that AJC, they love politics. And then Twitter has its own platform for newsletters, and so does MailChimp. These are some of my favorite newsletters. I think it's really important to subscribe to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ozzy.
If you could go back to that previous slide, or you don't even have to go back to it, but just like talking about Twitter, would y'all ever like, I don't know, like tweet a headline and then leave a link to the article or to the newsletter? Because for me, I spend a lot of time on Twitter. Twitter is a very fun place for me. And so when I'm scrolling, I see something that attracts me, I'm clicking on it. And so if you have an attractive news, like if you have an attractive headline, I'm gonna click on that, and whatever the replies say, or if there's a link attached, more than likely I'm gonna click on that and it'll take me to more information. So is that something that y'all would participate in?
Yes, absolutely. Our social team, they promote links all day long, and one of them is the newsletter link. So this will be a part of like newsletter strategy, what I'll discuss now. What we realized when we were revamping our newsletter strategy, that it was challenging for folks to sign up for a newsletter. So you would log on to the ajc.com, and it will require you to make this account to the AJC, and then it would take you to a newsletter preference page where you could skim everything and then sign up for a newsletter. We found that process to be extremely wonky, so we decided to create what we call seamless newsletter sign-up links. So once you click on the link, it will open a page that briefly describes what the newsletter is about, and then there's a box for you to just simply put your email. That's it. So you don't have to go through 11 steps to sign up for a newsletter. You just go through one. So once we created that link, that is something that we did promote across our social media channels. In fact, once we created that link, the first week that we promoted it for Unapologetically ATL, we gained 1,000 subscribers during our launch week. So we realized that just cleaning up some of those technical processes really helped us make folks aware of our product in an easier way. You don't want folks to have to do the most just to sign up for your product.
For sure.
Yeah. So we've done that for probably 20% of our newsletter, creating that seamless link. And now we're on a path to making sure every newsletter has a link that you can easily access and sign up for without having to go through too many steps. Does that answer your question?
It does.
So I think it's important to subscribe to a variety of newsletters. I'm lucky because of my role, and I am subscribed to every newsletter that the AJC offers because it's a part of my job. But I also look at newsletters from other publications. The New York Times cooking one is one of my favorite lifestyle newsletters. They just, the pictures alone just make me want to click on what the recipe is of the week. They have such descriptions of what the food is. A lot of times I don't know what that stuff is, but because I don't know what it is, I want to click on it to see if I can click it. Another newsletter that I love is the Lily. It's done by the Washington Post. And this newsletter focuses on gender and identity. And I actually was at a conference last week called the Online News Association, where they gave a beautiful presentation about their product. And this newsletter comes out twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Axios is another one I'm sure you're familiar with. I saw that Nikki mentioned this in her presentation on Tuesday. This one comes out daily. And I like Axios because they give you information in a succinct way, so you feel smarter within just a matter of 10 minutes. They break down their topics so easily. And then obviously the AJC. Another one is 5 Things from the CNN and the Skim, which I know Nikki also mentioned. It has a more international reach, so they don't keep it local. They take you all across the globe with their coverage. Now, LT in the City, this is a lifestyle newsletter. I was mentored by the writer of this newsletter, so she creates a weekly newsletter that's lifestyle based. So whatever is going on in her world, she's gonna write about it. What other newsletters have y'all subscribed to besides Unapologetically ATL?
I know I'm subscribed to the New York Times. This is one, it's definitely not like something that's, I don't know, like something major, but like I'm a sneaker collector, so I'm subscribed to not Complex. There's sneaker news, there's Kicks on Fire, and then the Complex, just those two. And so those just give me all of the updates on streetwear, the latest things in sneaker culture, things of that nature. So like I really love those.
I love that. I didn't even know they had a newsletter for that. I've actually been getting into streetwear a little bit. I was watching the show called The Hype earlier this week on HBO Max, and it's like a streetwear competition show. So, and I can't think of the guy's name, but I know he has been a member of the Complex team, that light-skinned man.
Light-skinned man, that's Complex.
I'm sure it'll come to me later. But that's a good
one. A lot of light-skinned news on Complex.
Are there any other newsletters that folks subscribe to that they want to shout out?
Variety.
Variety, okay.
Yeah, it's more so like the entertainment, like film and television, like any big news going on in that week.
Nice.
Actually, Kamarli, why don't you introduce yourself just briefly?
How are you? My name is Kamarli Henry, and I'm a junior journalism major.
Nice to meet you, Kamarli.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, keys to being a digital journalist. I know sometimes when people enter the journalism field, they're thinking about being a reporter or being an editor, but there is so much more you can do in this field. If you have access to the internet, if you know how to use the internet, you can be a digital journalist. So one example is a beat reporter. So if you cover a specific topic, I know Ozzy, you mentioned sports. You could be a beat reporter that just covers sports. The AJC actually has a beat reporter for every sports team in Atlanta. So we have somebody that just covers the Falcons and just covers the Braves or just covers Georgia football. We also have homepage producers. Those are folks who determine what you see when you log onto a website. So the order of a story, the way a story is positioned, the words that you read on a homepage, those are all determined by a homepage producer. A newsletter editor, I fall into that category. You can be a photographer. You can manage social media. So the AJC has accounts across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We have a producer for each of those platforms to help distribute our content and to come up with strategies. We also have app developers. So the AJC, we have an app where we send out push notifications to the breaking news of the day or any other content that we want to distribute. We have app developers who work on making sure that the design of the app looks good and that the functionality is working the way that it should. We also have graphic designers. I work with one of them for our newsletter template designs. He helps us make sure that things look good. You know, you don't want a newsletter that is ugly to look at. So you want to make sure that you use your designers who have the skill to make an attractive newsletter. You want your newsletter to be able to stand out. And we have data journalists. Data journalists help us tell stories with numbers or with graphs or with maps. The AJC hired recently, probably within the last year, a storytelling editor who works with data journalists. So if you have a story that involves a lot of numbers, maybe there is a poll or a lot of percentages that you have to try to explain in words, you can also display that in a visual way. So our data journalists help us to do that. We have partnership coordinators. The AJC recently hired one of these within the last year. We want to be able to work with other organizations within the country to cross promote our products. So recently we got a partnership with NABJ. They just launched a new website and we want to be able to utilize their website to promote our AJC content, and we want them to be able to use our AJC site to promote their NABJ content. So we have a partnership coordinator to help us navigate that. We also have videographers to help us record videos. We have podcasters. The AJC has, I believe, a podcast for every sports team. We also have Politically Georgia, which focuses on politics. We also have a Things to Do newsletter that focuses on entertainment and lifestyle coverage. So you can also get involved with journalism by producing a podcast. And then we have an SEO specialist. So you want to make sure that the content that you produce across the internet is searchable. You want to make sure that folks can find your information or your content easily. And an SEO producer will help make sure that your story includes keywords or metadata that makes sure that your results for your website show up at the top of a Google search. And I'm sure I've left out some positions, but these are some of the ones that come to mind. It is a lot, right? So what do you need to be a successful journalist? One thing that I learned is adaptability. Being able to adapt to your environment and the fast changing pace of a newsroom is really, really important. When I got to the AJC in 2016, my topics were health and careers and money. That only lasted a couple of months. After a couple of months, the newsroom strategy changed and I needed to pivot and pick another topic. So then we started to focus on viral news and culture and entertainment. So being able to be adaptable and learning how to write one topic from another topic, I think will get you really far. And then also being adaptable in terms of the type of journalism that you do. Again, I started out as a reporter and now I'm working on newsletters. I don't think that I didn't expect that when I first made it to the AJC at all. I did not expect to be in the newsrooms, in the newsletter space. So being adaptable is really important. Being curious is also important. One of the things I was curious about when I made it to the AJC was, well, why doesn't the AJC have enough Black coverage? You know, I get on this website and I love that the AJC is great at investigative news and political coverage, but knowing that Atlanta is a cultural hotspot made me curious about why we didn't have more content that was accessible to this cultural community. So being curious will help you in the long run because we ended up launching Unapologetically ATL. Creativity is obviously one that you need to be able to utilize. Being innovative, being able to present new ideas to your newsroom is great. It's also important to have good news judgment. So knowing what's important, being in tune with what your audience likes, knowing what you need to communicate to your audience is really important. I use news judgment when I'm curating the content for our newsletters. So when I'm looking at, for example, our politics newsletters, good news judgment will mean knowing what topics to include. So I know that Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker are really popular in the news. So good news judgment will be including pieces in that newsletter. Being vocal, you want to make sure that you are speaking up. Age does not matter. You want to make sure that your voice is heard in these newsroom meetings. When you have opportunities to pitch ideas, make sure that you speak up. If there's something that you disagree with, you should also speak up and be able to present your case intelligently and respectfully. So always remember that your voice is necessary. And being data-driven. This one has been super important the more I elevate in my career. Being able to examine and identify the data that is important to the type of content you're producing is very, very important. You use data to help you determine what type of decisions you make. So I know earlier that I mentioned we're looking at open rates and click rates, and we're also looking at the topics that folks click on when they're entering into a newsletter. Being able to look at this data will help me to determine the type of news that I need to choose for a particular newsletter. And this isn't just with newsletters. If you are working as a producer or a beat reporter, you need to be able to see how many page views that your story got. How often are folks clicking on a particular topic that you're writing about? Knowing that will help you be able to have stronger pitches when you're pitching ideas to editors. You have to have some passion. Like, I'm very passionate about the Black community, and I really believe that helped us produce unapologetically ATL, and we got a lot of buy-in from our senior leadership because the team that works on this product was really passionate about it. We wanted to see the Black community reflected in the pages of the AJC a lot more often. And being a forever learner, I learned something new every day. My dad taught me that you never stop being a student. Well, after you get your degree, well, after you get your job, there will always be something new to learn. When I got my job at the AJC, I didn't know I was going to be learning about newsletters, but here I am today, being a forever learner with that. And we're also learning more about newsletters as we go, determining what newsletters perform best. So just, again, examining data and being collaborative will help you with that. And knowing when to rest. Like, this one is huge. Go to sleep, take a nap, enjoy a bubble bath, go for a walk, go play with your dog. Having balance in this industry is very, very important. Sometimes the news can get really heavy. Like right now, there's a lot of news about Hurricane Ian. You know, I'm gonna get to it when I feel like I'm in the mental space to receive that type of heavy news. So please take your breaks. I think that is very crucial. And then, you know, that is all that I have. What questions can I answer for you?
I have a question. This is something that I feel like we can relate to as you're an AUC graduate, but like we're students. But as a Spelman graduate, and this is something I experienced as a student, but I haven't experienced it in the workforce completely yet. The era of expectancy that comes with being a Spelhouse grad, on top of being Black, you know, you tell somebody, I mean, you see that we're obviously Black, and then you tell somebody, oh, I went to Morehouse, or I went to Spelman, or I go there. There's an air of expectancy. They expect you to carry yourself a certain way, to know certain things. You know what I'm saying? How does that affect your work? And not even just within writing, just in general, and just out in the real world.
Now, what expectation are you talking about? Because there are a lot of.
I know for like, at least for Spelman and Morehouse grads, they expect us to have a certain level of professionalism, a certain level of knowledge. They expect us, some people expect us to be a little like nose up, stuck up kind of, but not even that, just I think the pressure that comes with being graduates from our institution. What is that like?
I think I got a little lucky because after I finished Spelman College, I had an internship at a Black publication. So that, I feel like I was still in similar environments. I was around an all Black team. My editors were Black. So whatever expectation or pressure that I might have been feeling, I think they were experiencing it as well. But I don't think that I let the pressure affect me too much because I had to remember that I was there to learn and to gain knowledge. So whatever expectations or pressure people put on me was really a them problem and less of a me problem. So walking into spaces with confidence, knowing that you are confident about the knowledge that you have acquired really helped me out a lot.
Thank you.
And then also just letting your work speak for itself, you know, like show people what you are capable of. You know, I'm less about the talk, read my article, read my newsletter, and then you can see exactly what I'm capable of. And hopefully that'll answer a lot of your questions. But again, that's really, you know, when people put certain expectations on you or certain pressure points on you, it's usually less, it has less to do about you and more to do about them. So don't let that be a distraction. You are there for a reason. Stay focused. What other questions can I answer?
If you like. So this is actually something I was thinking, if you go to the previous slide, I think it was talking about rest. So you had two last points, forever learner and knowing when to rest. For me, those are like putting those together is almost like an oxymoron because like I'm just thinking about the life of a journalist, whatever kind of role you have, it feels like you're always working. You're always paying attention to what's going on in the world. You're taking mental notes of that. Then on top of that, you're actually going to work. You're in these offices, you're in these meetings. So it feels like you're always working. So like I feel like the only rest you get is when you sleep. Is with a position where you're always analyzing and paying attention to what's happening in the world. So what exactly does rest look like?
Rest looks like having a cutoff time every day. Now, I'll be transparent. I am still working on this. I don't always get it right. Like yesterday, I didn't do well at resting. I think I worked until 7 or 8 p.m. And I wanted to be watching Married at First Sight by that time. But one thing that I have learned from Nikki is that every day is different. You know, you might be uber productive on Monday and work until 8 p.m. on Monday. And then Tuesday, you can scale it back. Just don't expect every day to be the exact same and know when to have your cutoff time. So I try to have a cutoff time at 5 p.m. Unless breaking news gets in my way, I stick with that. So engaging with my friends, socializing, taking naps, taking bubble baths is one of my favorite ways to wind down. You have to determine it for yourself what you want your cutoff time to be.
For sure. And I asked the question because I remember it was just actually last year we were taking the intro to multimedia studies. And we, Kamarla, you were actually with us. It was the Hawks trip. So we went to one of the Hawks games. And so we had to write a story, but as a journalist. So we wrote the story at the game. Of course, we watched the game. And then after the game, we watched the post-game interviews. And so like it was constant. The entire day was constant. Like there really was no break specifically. Because even during halftime, we're writing during halftime.
Yeah.
We're writing during the game. We can't even enjoy the game fully because we're working. So like just curious as to like what that cutoff time and break really looks like.
Yeah. Sports is a hard one. I have not been in that field before.
Luckily, like I've been an athlete my whole life. So that kind of interest in that stuff comes. I don't want to say it comes easy, but like when you enjoy something, for me, it doesn't seem like a obstacle or like it doesn't seem as tedious when you really enjoy it. I'm sure y'all experience the same thing when y'all writing.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Like with unapologetically, yesterday, even though I was working at 7 or 8 p.m., I was really having a good time. I was writing about some of my favorite topics. I wrote about a podcast that I enjoy and Lil Nas X. We produced a photo gallery from one of his shows. I wrote about that. So I was having a good time, but I do understand what you mean about having a hard cutoff time and finding ways to relax. So I hope that day when y'all had to cover the Hawks game during halftime, during the game, post-game coverage, I hope your next day looked a lot different than the actual game day.
Can I also say, Ozzy, that, that I think that you might want to explore what a particular beat might look like. So a sports person's beat, you have to think about like, they're not home for dinner all the time. So, because they're at a 7 o'clock baseball game, right? So that's very different, and politics is different. A particular time of the year, they're gonna be busy if it's midterms and if you're a breaking news editor, you might have a regular flow until news breaks, and then you're not able to go to lunch the same time everyone else is. So I think maybe I learned that I like features because features, I'm home by 6, and there's sometimes I got pulled in the breaking news because I'm good at that, or maybe an artist died or things like that. For the most part, I can like count on a pretty regular schedule because I'm writing about the community and what to do and the interesting things that surround us in our own environment. And so it just provided me some regularity. You have to make a decision on what you want to do, and your life will also change. You'll go from single to married, or not kids to kids, or living in the city to living in the burbs, or whatever decisions you make. And that might dictate what type of work you want to do. And that it's okay to change that over time. Kamarla, you had a question for Najja.
Hi. So when it comes to creativity, so this was kind of answered. This was pretty much answered, like having that hard cutoff time. But I would just say, because my question was more so like just seeing a lot of what's going on in the world and how it can often be draining, like getting all of that getting all of those like news at once, like so much things coming on in at once, like especially with the hurricane, hurricane going on. It's like I would more so say, how do you not let it like the negativity impact your creativity, and would you be like how would you like not let it change your creativity, but be transformed by it in a positive way, if that makes sense.
Oh, that does make sense. When I'm having my off time, I like the podcasts that I enjoy most are not related to news whatsoever. Like the TV shows that I enjoy are not related to news whatsoever. When I am off my job, I don't want to talk about the news at all. You know, sometimes my mom will call me and she'll be like, "Girl, did you hear about the hurricane?" Yes, but we're not about to talk about that right now. Let's talk about what you did. I don't know, at Bible study. So like being able to enjoy and consume other content or products that are not related to the news really helps me out a lot. And also having managers or bosses that are understanding of that. 2020 was a really rough year for a lot of journalists and everybody in the world. But journalists, we had to cover these really hard topics. We were talking about the pandemic and coronavirus, and then we had all the racial protests that were going on throughout the streets. Our bosses encouraged us to take mental health days and breaks. Therapy also helps a lot. I go to therapy so that I can have a release and I'm not dumping on people who do not deserve it. So you'll be able to find your outlets in a variety of ways. But for me, not consuming the news after work helps me to stay creative.
Absolutely. For me, I would say for me, it's like I love going to the movies and just like it's a great it's a great like relaxer. Like even during the pandemic, that's what made it kind of challenging because everywhere was closed down. But now that it's like slowly coming back, like everywhere is like opening up more, then it's like, yeah, that's definitely a good thing.
I can relate to that. I also love going to the movies, and I will go by myself and take a blanket, and I have to do the lounge chairs now because, I'm bougie now. And so I go and lean back with my blanket and just tune out the world. So I agree.
And just wonder, what are your favorite kind of movies?
Favorite kind of movie? I will watch anything, to be honest. What's the last movie? I think the last movie that I watched in theaters was Hunk for Jesus. And so that was a bold one. That was a very bold topic, but I enjoyed that. But I love drama. I love romance. Halloween season is upon us, so I will be going to the theater to watch some horror films. So really a little bit of everything.
Awesome.
Nice.
I had two small questions. One, can we get the information for the AJC internship?
Yes.
I
Okay.
would love to see like what the requirements are and what that entails. And this is a random question. Are you Greek at all?
I am not Greek.
Just curious. For sure. But yeah, I would love the information on that, the AGC internship.
I will definitely do that. We have interns throughout the year, and summer is obviously the bigger program where folks come and tackle different things. So last year we had folks who were on the newsletter team, folks who were on the social media team. We had folks who were on the politics and local government team. So you have an opportunity to get your work published. We had folks on sports, people who are interested in photography. So all of these things that I listed in this slide, you have an opportunity to really explore if that is the fit for you. And it's okay if it's not. You just try something until it does fit. That's what internships are for. Do I like this? If not, let me try a new thing.
That's dope.
So when I first started out, I was in grad school and we did a lot of local government. We were at the Capitol a lot. Didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it at all. So similar to Nikki, I was like, oh, features, lifestyle, culture, entertainment. That was more my speed. So please use those internships as an opportunity to find out what your interests are. Come on.
Awesome.
So so I'm from Connecticut, and there I've been a cartoonist for their newspaper for the last 3 years. And I was wondering like if there's anything for like anybody like who does like a cartoonist or any editorials, anything like that.
Oh, I love this question for two reasons. We have a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist at the AJC. His name is Mike Lukovich. A lot of his work focuses on the political scene. The second reason I love this question is because I recently attended a conference that happened last week, and I attended a session about comics, and it was so insightful. So I attended this particular session because I didn't know a lot about this field. And what I learned is that the folks who were presenting, particularly the women at the Washington Post, they enlist the help of a lot of freelance illustrators and cartoonists to help make their products come to life. And they're able to use these illustrations and drawing and spread them across social media and also across their newsletters. And one platform that they used the most was Instagram, because they were able to use the slideshow to tell these stories. So yes, there is opportunity for that. And it's something that I don't know a lot about, but I am super interested in it, because even with Unapologetically, I would love to collaborate with cartoonists and illustrators to better tell our stories. And I think it will also be a great way to help get the community involved in our storytelling. So I love that you asked that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will also see if there is any content available from that particular session at the conference that I could share with you. Even if there's like a Twitter thread that detailed what they discussed, I'll see what I can find.
Is it okay if I share a link of my work?
Yes, please.
Chat? Right.
Right. Sounds like you guys are reflecting a little bit. I'm sorry, it's rumbling, that dang bobcat. So thank you, Kamali, for sharing that with everyone. And actually, I will copy this, make sure Najja gets it directly. So what other questions do you all have before Najja finishes? Okay. Well, I
Do
just
you have questions for us?
It's a good question. Did you hear Ozzy's question?
Oh, do I have questions for you all?
Do you have questions for us?
Yeah. So what type of journalism have you explored so far, and which resonates with you the most right now?
That's a great question. I know for me, the journalism I consume the most always has content that I consume the most. Like, and what I mean by that is, like I told you, I'm a sneaker collector. I'm always on sneaker news. I'm always on Complex. Then I'm watching ESPN every single morning. I actually start my day with ESPN every morning. So like stuff like that. And I'm always reading journalism through sports. And then I'll dabble into other stuff, such as, this is actually sports, but like last night I read an article on the history of Black swim and like some of the limitations we've faced. Why are there not so many Black swimmers? Stuff like that. And then I try to get into current events, like news, like important stuff. You know what I'm saying? Politics and stuff like that. But sometimes I feel like I'm reading it because I have to. But the stuff that I like, I have hobbies in. That's what I'm really consuming the most.
That's okay, Ozzy. I think that when it comes to things like politics or geopolitical conversations or finance or whatever, that sometimes can feel a little bit longer and drawn out, Axios is a good opportunity to read something that is more distilled down to the point, and it gives you the nuggets that you need to read and go. So you might want to think about Axios if you're not looking to read a 3,000 word dissection of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. You can read Axios in probably about 3 minutes or less.
Yeah. And then I will also add that what I'm interested in changes over time. So you can expect that to happen too.
For sure. That's dope.
Before you start, Kamali, I'm going to share this AJC link. My colleague Ernie Suggs wrote about Black swimmers and data surrounding drowning deaths and why that is, just in case you're interested in more.
Thank you. I am.
Cool.
I can take a course on swimming, so that's perfect.
And we featured that in the newsletter too.
That's dope.
Okay, what about you, Kamali?
So I listen to a lot of news, just anything having to do in the arts and entertainment, field, and anything that has to do with like films and television, and just even just behind the scenes, like cover it, like news, like TV shows, how are they filmed, like the renewal process, things like that, and what films box office, and just many different things. Even and mostly like a lot, I'm interested in like the business side of it as well, and just learning like how, you know, those things all work together. But every now and then I'll listen to like the more of the politics, everything going on. It can be a little draining a lot of the time, not gonna lie, but it's still important. You know, I still think it's important.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
well,
completely forgot about music.
Mm.
Music is definitely like one. I mean, y'all see all these vinyls and CDs behind me. I even got like more on this side, all types of stuff. But I consume a lot. I mean, a lot of music content. I'm on Pitchfork. Pitchfork is my favorite. I really love Pitchfork. It's surprising how much like Twitter is a hub for different sources of journalism. Because I'm always on Twitter, but there's always a link somewhere to something. So I use Twitter a lot. It'll take me different places, but I consume a lot of music content.
Mhm.
Yeah.
well,
I'm
Twitter-
hearing you getting our news from social media. I heard somebody say they were listening, so that makes me think podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Podcasts are very slept on. I feel like, I don't know, you can trust anybody that listens to podcasts. You know what I'm saying? I love podcasts.
Yeah, I think I like listening to podcasts too, because like as much as I like reading, I also like to listen, because then I can also do other things at the same time and still like taking information.
Exactly. It's like you're being productive 2 times. Like,
Yeah.
it's dope.
Well, podcasts are also just very like introspect. They're personal. It's like you forget everyone's around you. You just you come into this is good storytelling.
Yeah.
It's 1:15, so I do not want to keep you all past 1:15. I will share this recording of Najja's lecture today. Thank you so much, Najja. Always riveting, and I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and transferring it to all of us. You just made us better, so I appreciate it. And you guys will get a note from me either today or tomorrow. Keep listening to Seeing White and let me know if you have any questions about the assignment. And that is your midterm. And as I promised, you will have a grade in your inbox by the end of this weekend from your first assignment.
Lovely.
Bye.
Thank you.
Najja, if you want to stick around for a second, that